Hi, this is the Magnificent Midlife podcast, and I'm Rachel Lancaster. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now is our time. My guest today is Tonya Carter, and Tonya is a relationship transformation coach. She's the author of Divorce Your Story, A Woman's Guide to Heal and Thrive After Divorce. And she runs a 12-week program called Thrive that stretches women to look within to awaken their voice, evolve relationally, and lead personally and professionally in all areas of life. I've read the book and it's really very good. It's a great read, so I recommend it. So Tonya, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Rachel. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's a good thing to talk about. I have discussed divorce on the podcast before, but not for a very long time. And I really like your perspective on it. So let's dig in. And so you write about and you coach women through divorce. How did you come to specialize in relationship transformation?
Oh, that's a good question because I did not expect that to be a part of my journey. I didn't even realize I was stuck in my own story. So when I had that level of awakening in my own personal life, which was 5 years post my divorce, it made me see that I had more in me that I already knew was there, but I just didn't give myself permission to realize that it was there. However, when you go through that level of healing, it turns into evolving. And the more you evolve, the more you see that there's more for you as a person. And I realized that there's so many people that are unknowingly stuck in their story. And I am a woman of faith, and I really did a lot of praying about that, and it led me here. And this is where I am right now in my journey, is to really help women thrive, like truly get out of that narrative that they keep replaying.
And why do we get so stuck? Especially, I believe, in midlife. I think we get really stuck in midlife. But why do women get stuck in these stories?
One of the biggest things I think is just having the expectation that this was going to last. You know what I'm saying? And when it doesn't, it can automatically perceive to you that you're a failure. And for women that are in midlife, so we're talking maybe starting at 40s, you kind of look back on your life and you may realize, well, what can I do now? What is it that's left of me to do? It's almost like you put a period on your life where only a comma is. And you forget the fact that you get the ability to write a new chapter. I've had women who's told me that they lost themselves. They really don't know who they are. Chances are they may have really put everything of themselves into their marriage, into their children, with no room for their own identity, their own authenticity, really seeing the things that they like to do. So when you're talking about do the things you love, you probably don't even remember what that is because everything has been about your family. And now you may feel, or you may be led to believe, that there's nothing else after this situation. I'm 45, especially women over 50. I find that sometimes to be a challenge because you feel like you've reached that point where there's nothing else for you to do. But the average woman lives to be 85. The average woman lives to be 85. So for you to write yourself off for 30 and 40 more years is doing yourself a disservice. So much can happen, even in a year. It's amazing. My clients in 1 year change so much about their life. However, if I can get them to believe in themselves, then that right there, that will change them forever.
It's maddening, isn't it, how we do this to ourselves, that
Absolutely.
we have these, we subscribe to these narratives and these ridiculous negative concepts that, it's interesting. You said 50. I think 50 is a time in a woman's life, yeah, when we go, blimey, what have I done? Or where am I stuck? Or yes, this is the end of meaningful life. And I'm forever saying, no, it's just another stage. I love what you said about putting a period. So it's full stop. If we say full stop over here, period where a comma should be. I think that's wonderful because we put these limitations on ourselves, don't we?
Absolutely. Limitations that aren't even real.
Mm.
Sometimes you've been told, well, once you get married and have children, you're no longer important. It's all about your family, and you're constantly told that. And for the relationship or the marriage not to work, you do wonder, where do I go from here? But it is the power you hold is seeking that. And knowing that you have a choice is more powerful than anything. When people tell me I don't have a choice, they're actually choosing not to choose.
Mm.
You see? And so when you make that choice intentionally every day to seek, it will come. I mean, rebuilding is not easy. I'm not going to paint a pretty picture. It can be challenging, especially if you've been in something abusive, especially if you've been in something for decades. Um, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons as to why it can be challenging. However, I think it would be more challenging to stay where you don't want to be.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really shared very much about this, I don't think, on here, but I'm divorced. I'm on my second marriage now, and there was a real sense of failure when my first marriage ended, but I walked away, and I think some people, it's interesting. I think increasingly women do walk away from relationships, but there is still that sense that women shouldn't do that. Women shouldn't leave. They should stick it out. I mean, my mum stuck it out. She stuck it out. And I remember when I was young, I'm all right, she doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can say it quietly. But I used to wish that my parents would get divorced because it was such an unhappy relationship, but they stayed because they had this notion that that was the thing you did when you had children. Well, it was the thing you did when you got married. You got married, you were in it for life, even though actually my dad had been married before, which I didn't find out until I was quite a bit older. But yeah, my mum stuck it out, and to me, I think that taught me that when I could see that my marriage was not sustainable, I perhaps left quickly because of my own experience. I thought, I don't want to be a martyr. I don't want to stay in this marriage when it's just not working for any of us anymore.
Absolutely. I think it takes courage to make that decision. Um, because you are taught to stay and work it out. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't think that is a wrong thing to do. I think if both people are willing to do what is required individually to come together collectively, then we can actually go that path. However, if it's abusive, whether it's mental, verbal, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, you have to look and see what it would happen, what it would do to you long term. What is it going to do to your children? And how is it going to shape their narratives about relationships as well as themselves? So this stuff, it comes in layers. Everyone gets impacted in unhealthy relationships, just as well as we get impacted if we were around healthy relationships. And making the choice to detach yourself and rebuild your life takes a lot of courage to do. And I really applaud people who make that tough decision.
It's super scary. I mean, I suppose also I was lucky in that I was the main breadwinner at that stage. So I had the financial ability to leave. And so many women don't, do they? And
Right.
I think that I've talked about this on the podcast as well, that women in midlife and beyond, we don't have the financial security we need to have agency within our relationships. We then become
perhaps more compliant than we might be because we are beholden financially. We don't have the enough funds to be able to be autonomous, I suppose. Do you find that that happens with women that you're working with, that they just can't leave because there's too much tied up financially and they don't have that power?
I have definitely met women where money is definitely a limitation for them to not exit. I will say that the majority of my clients are probably more financially independent. I think one of the challenges is having enough long term,
Mm.
right? So they may be able to pay the bills and do the day to day, but then we're talking about maybe retirement or having enough money, in their later years of life. And that comes in all being intentional, developing a plan, seeing where we can make more money and build a level of wealth because money is so abundant. And a lot of the time, it's our mindset about money that typically keeps us in hostage. And so, when we really give ourselves permission to realize that I can have some too, I can have a piece of the pie too, then it opens up, all the opportunities that you can have. I mean, myself, I lost 5 jobs in 4 years from '08 to 2012. And my first layoff was when me and um my my ex-husband separated. We separated 2 weeks later. I lost my first job. And then
Oof.
it proceeded to be 4 jobs after that. And so it was definitely very stressful. It put a lot of limitations on what I think I could have. And so I found myself just playing it quote unquote safe. And when I played it safe, I never really moved forward. I found myself kind of living paycheck to paycheck, having enough to get by, thinking that because I'm a single mom, this is all I can have. Thinking because I lost 5 jobs in 4 years, this is all that's available. And when you limit yourself to that, you don't give yourself the opportunity to say, hey, there is an abundance of money. And my mindset around money was very distorted. And I had to learn how to create a new money mindset. My relationship with money wasn't healthy. And so, a lot of us don't think our mindset is just that powerful because it's so habitual. But when you go into a place of consciousness and see, wow, I really have limited myself to what I could have and what could be. And so, one of the things that I do with my clients is really for them to hone in on what they do very well. Hone in into, are you really getting paid for what you're worth, or are you settling for what you think you can have? So I've had clients that have left jobs to make more money. I've had clients who completely walked away from their job because they started their own businesses. So just knowing that that's an opportunity for me and not limiting that to others and not yourself is definitely a game changer.
Wow, that is powerful stuff, actually. Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I do is about changing the mindset and opening up to possibility.
Absolutely.
But that is really when the relationship breaks down to open up to that possibility is massive as well. And what I really liked about your book is that it's a very practical guide. So it's not just
Thank
about
you.
the emotional side of divorce, but it's about divorcing yourself from all of the other things. It's like life reboot. That's what I, sort of saw it as. I thought it was really, really well put together, and that it covers everything in terms of, you know, all the things that we need to deal with. Because in the way that I always talk about menopause as being this timestamp in our lives, and it's an opportunity to take stock of our health, our emotional health, our physical health. And I think the way you've presented divorce in a way is it's a time to take stock of everything in your life, isn't it? And to work out what is working, what isn't working, rather than just thinking, oh, it's just a relationship and I need to move on from that. Because then you'll just repeat the same old things, won't you? So, what are some of the things that you see women repeating?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Definitely relationships gets repetitive. A lot of the time we're on autopilot, Rachel, where we're just doing what we know to do, know without any awareness or even going into a place of consciousness. It's just repeated behavior. We're creatures of habit. And so, as you mentioned before, taking inventory of everything, a lot of us are living a life that never was really intended for us to live anyway. Okay. So, what we have to understand is that our stories, our events, our circumstances, our environments, how we were raised, all of that has an impact on how we see ourselves, how we see life, how we see relationships, everything. And a lot of the time when this relationship doesn't work out, we tend to think that it's just the relationship when in reality it's so many other things, whether it be your friendships, your relationship, even with your parents. That can be a tough one. But what I find is that when we go back down memory lane and get to that root of our childhood, it changes so many other things. We realize that the career that we have isn't really what we want, right? We realize that even though I love being a mom, that's not all who I am, right? I love being a mom. However, there are other things that I want to do for myself. Just being honest, giving yourself that gift of truth. That can be the most toughest thing when you have to take a look in the mirror and look at yourself as opposed to looking at everything and everyone else around you and pointing the finger as to why you are the way you are or where you're at based upon other people and things of that nature. And so what I found in myself is that it wasn't just my marriage. I wasn't happy in my career. I felt like I was living a life my parents wanted me to live. I felt like I was looking to be validated, to be accepted, because there was a part of me that just didn't fully accept myself for all of what I was. I realized that I knew I was settling. Like it wasn't even a thing. I knew I was settling. I was like, it got to be more than this. Relationships with men, I found myself looking for them to pick me, because I wanted to be chosen. I wanted someone to say that you're that girl, you're that woman. And instead of looking for everyone else to validate me, I had to go within and validate myself for who everything, for all I was, everything I've been through, knowing that it was for me and not against me, and also realizing that I create my own identity. That was my power, knowing that no, you can create it. If you don't like what you're getting, you can create a new life. You can create a new narrative. You don't have to keep accepting what doesn't work for you. And so just really doing a complete audit and really saying, you know what, I don't like my life at all. I don't like even the woman I'm becoming. I didn't like any of that about myself. And I had to take that personal accountability and do what was in my power to change the narrative.
Yeah, it's so, so important, isn't it? I just think, yeah, because then we just, otherwise we go off and we do the same thing all over again. And we wonder why, don't we? Sometimes we just keep doing the same thing and we wonder why we don't get different results. And that's the definition of insanity, isn't it? I think, wasn't it Einstein said something like that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I know a lot of what you talk about as well, and you touched on it earlier, is this idea of the growth mindset. So can you talk a bit about that? How do you encourage women to do the audit, but also have that growth mindset in terms of the possibilities available?
That's a great question. I think one of the first things is being honest with yourself. When no one's around, when you're not on social media, it's good. It's easy to put up a facade and say I'm fine and I'm okay. I did it. I was great at doing it. However, when my father had a heart attack, that woke me up about my life. So I think the first thing is to just be honest with yourself, not from a place of shame. This is just from a place of being real with yourself. Don't feel guilty, don't feel bad, but just give yourself that gift of truth because you deserve it. I think another thing is to be actionable towards what it is that you would like to achieve. And I think that comes with help. I would definitely say that that wasn't my strength in asking for help. I had to learn how to ask. Like I'm going to tell you, Rachel, that's not my strength. I do not like, I mean, I've always been a person of doing it myself. And I took pride in that a lot. And there is pride in it, but I had an unhealthy pride of doing it all, not realizing that I needed someone else to teach me. So I had to also be coachable in saying that. Being around like-minded people, your environment is so crucial. And some of us are not just aware. Again, taking that audit, we're around people, we're on looking at certain things on social media that only reaffirms the current narrative that you have. And so being around a different energy is very important to your growth and development. I think another thing is constant consciousness, right? To always self-assess yourself, seeing what this is doing to you. I always tell my clients, do an energy check. That's what I tell them. Do an energy check. Do an energy check at your job. Do an energy check with the people you talk to on the phone, the people you text, to the people you follow, to the conversations you have. Just do an energy check on how you feel. Take inventory of those emotions. Take inventory of what's going on in your head, and be honest with that. And because what happens is your body tells you, your body tells you everything. I don't care what anybody tells you. Your body never lies. I mean, people can make you sick. Environments can make you sick. And so just taking inventory of what's around you and making adjustments intelligently is important. I mean, this stuff sounds easy, but what I find is that it's probably one of the most challenging things to do, because now you are loving yourself. You're doing something that you've never done before, and that's prioritizing your well-being and your quality of life. Some of us are bona fide people pleasers. Some of us hate telling people no. We fear that other people may not like us, and that will not allow you to have a growth mindset. It will actually keep you in a fixed mindset where you will stay somewhere you don't belong. Realizing that even though you have a thought, that doesn't mean it's true. I think we're very keen on, well, this is how I think. I can't help how I think. I think we have to challenge what we're thinking and ask ourselves, is this really accurate? Is this a concrete truth, or is it a passing thought? And when we realize we have that power to choose what thoughts we want to entertain, then this is how we develop a growth mindset. Because your thoughts are telling you something. You should definitely pay attention to them. You should see where it's coming from. Why are you feeling this way? Where did this thought come from? But then we have to challenge that belief and ask ourselves, does this match with who I want to become? Is this in alignment with the highest version of myself, or the next level of myself? So it's quite a few different things that you do have to do. It kind of goes into the pot of evolving. Right? However, as I tell people, don't try to do so many things. Start with one thing. Just start with one thing. Make a choice to decide, do you really like where you are? Is this enough for you? When you get to the end of your life, what would you say? Would you say, I wish I'd done something different, or I'm glad I did? And that right there, if you want to say, I'm glad I did this, then take inventory of your life at this present moment. And ask yourself, what can I do to move forward where I can honestly say, I'm glad I made that change when I did. I hope that helps.
No, that's very great. That's great. But we can get very caught up in regret, especially again in midlife, can't we? And especially around divorce and the sense of failure and the sense of having wasted time as well sometimes.
Absolutely.
Why
Absolutely.
did I waste all that time? So what can we do about that so that we don't get stuck and caught up in regret?
Yes, you have regret, which I'm going to be honest with you, Rachel. I think we all at some point may have regret something. Doesn't necessarily, I think it's more of the long-term regret that is more of our challenge, because long-term regret turns into depression. It turns into anxiety. It becomes a very dark place where you almost feel like I can't get out, right? And because I've had clients who are in their 50s who have lived a certain level of regret. However, one thing that I admired in those clients is that they made the choice to still do the work despite of how they felt at that present moment. And so that part is very important because they may be real at the moment, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're right. And if we're always moving on our current emotions, we definitely won't make the best decision that will take us out of regret. Even if you don't, like, here's the thing, you don't have to know all the answers. I think there's a level of certainty that we want before we make a move. I think the most important thing is for you to know that where you are isn't working for you. And making that choice to get the help, I think this is where you got to get the help outside of yourself. Maybe reading a book just isn't enough. Maybe listening to a podcast isn't enough. Maybe you need therapy. Maybe you need a level of coaching for a certain period of time to start getting you out, celebrating everything that you do every day. That's one thing that I do with my clients. What did you do to win today? I don't care how small it is. If you got up on time, that's a win. Whereas before, you may have hit the snooze button 15 times before you got out of bed. Did you go walking for 15 minutes? That's a win. When we start looking at what we have done for the day, those wins add up and they compound over time. So it really is an intentional space that you do have to emerge in, but it's the small things that create the big change. What are you truly grateful for? Not just for waking up in the morning, even though that is a great thing to do, but let's start to be more intentional. What are we grateful for? Just honing into gratitude, honing into our wins, being very strategic about how we're going to make this day count. It's really about setting the intention. Every single day, you have to set the intention. Affirmations are great. However, we want to move on what it is that we're affirming. So we're affirming that, I'm more than my past. Then we have to prove that by making moves that's going to direct us into a better present and a better future. So it's small things, but that's what creates the macro. It's the micro that creates the macro. I hope that answers your question.
And we have to do the work, don't we? We can't.
You have
not
to do the
work.
You have to do the work. You can't go around it. You can't go under it. You can't get into another relationship. You can't believe that time will heal. Time is a component, but time alone doesn't heal the wound. It's the action plus the time that equals the healing. So you have to think this as a compound effect on your healing and on your life. So if you're doing something for 90 days, because my program is 12 weeks, so it's about 90 days. So much happens over time in that 90-day period when you decide every day to do the work. No matter how hard it is, no matter if you don't know what's going to happen next week, just focus on the current day and what you have at this present moment and do the work. There's absolutely no way you can do it. You can get past this without doing your healing. And this is not, and even though someone may have hurt you, that doesn't excuse their behavior, but it's not their responsibility to heal you. And I know that's a hard one because people say, well, Tonya, but they did me wrong. I can't believe they did this to me. They lied to me. They abused me. They hurt me. And I'm not discounting what they've done. However, they're not going to be the person that heal you and set you free. And some of us are in a level of bondage because that's what we're waiting for. We're looking for the I'm sorry. We're looking for the I've done you wrong. Will you forgive me? And I'm going to be honest with you. If you're waiting on that, you probably would never get it. And you also have to think, why would I give someone that kind of power over my life and my direction, waiting for them to set me free,
I was listening to your podcast earlier, and I think it was with Dana. And she talked about how in her mind she had forgiven the abusive partner that she had in the past. And when she did that, he then reached out and apologized. So he didn't know that she'd done this, but she'd done it for herself.
Right.
And then he reached out and apologized, which I thought was really powerful, because that act of forgiveness is for us, isn't it? It's for our healing.
It is. It is. It's a journey. It's not, and I think forgiveness is probably one of the most hardest things to do. In everything, it's like, and I think what could be one of the issues is understanding what forgiveness isn't. Forgiveness isn't about reconciliation. There are some times where reconciliation may not be the best choice. You don't have to be enemies, but you don't have to be BFFs, you know? You can forgive respectfully and have a distance between you and that person. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. You don't forget, you don't get amnesia on what somebody's done to you. It's more about letting go of the story and keeping it off replay, right? It's about making room for a new chapter, because when you make room for the new chapter, the more that does become a distant memory. It's like sometimes you don't even really think about it, maybe unless in conversation and someone asks you, but it's not something that you just have on the forefront. Forgiveness isn't even about how you feel. It's not. It's about what makes sense. Because again, our feelings may be real, but they may not be right. Like today, you may feel like forgiving. Tomorrow, you may think about something they did and say, girl, I ain't forgiving that. And then you go right back to not doing it. So that's when I say it's not a feeling, because it's up and down. It is a up and down situation. Forgiveness is not about waiting for an apology, because a lot of us are looking for an apology in order to forgive. And so when Dana on that episode, when she made it in her power to forgive, energetically, this is how powerful energy is. I mean, because it's almost as if people know that you've moved on without you even letting them know. And so now he reaches out to apologize and, extend an olive branch. She's already moved on with her life. And so it's just really understanding that, and also realizing that it is a intentional choice. And every day you have to choose. Even when you're triggered, you still have to choose. Even when you don't feel like it, you still have to choose, like, no, I forgive them. But I think also forgiving yourself is very important. Self-forgiveness. I think when we learn how to forgive ourselves and realize that we're imperfect, realize that we make mistakes, realize that we're human, I think it also helps us learn how to forgive other people for their shortcomings as well.
Something else you mentioned in the book that I really liked is this idea of embracing our singleness. And that so many people, they rush into another relationship and they haven't done the work. But I really like that idea of embracing the singleness. So tell me a bit about that.
Yes, singleness is an individuality. Who you are and whose you are comes from your singleness. Singleness is not technically a relationship status. Being single is a relationship status. And so singleness is such a important time of a person's life to really discover themselves. And when I say discover, we're always on a journey of evolving, but who you are in your singleness makes a difference and impacts who you choose in a relationship. It just does. As I tell people, one of the biggest things that we live in a world where there's an extreme amount of pressure on being in a relationship. And so that pressures you to be with someone, even if this person doesn't compliment you. But because it gets rid of this being single status, then you make that choice to be with them, knowing that that's something that you shouldn't have done. And so as I tell people that singleness season or that singleness is a time to, heal, do some, do your inner work, Figure out the things that you love to do. Understanding what your core values are. Everything comes from those core values. And when you understand what your value system is, you choose intelligently. All your decisions will go off your core values. And so one of the things that I do heavily emphasize is really enjoying that singleness part of yourself. And who you are as a single doesn't, I'm not going to say it doesn't change, but who you are in your singleness is what goes into the relationship. You just see here's what I think. A lot of the times we see a lot of issues in our romantic relationships because there's a level of intimacy that has to be displayed. And so this is why I always really inform people to really get an idea of who they are in their singleness. So when they go into a relationship, they have an idea of who they are, what they need, things of that nature. A lot of us are looking for someone else to make us happy. We're looking for someone to complete us per se. And a person should be more complimentary to you, not necessarily complete you. I realized that no one could make me happy. No one. My kids could not make me happy. My ex-husband could not make me happy. Nobody could make me happy. That was my own personal responsibility to do. And it came from being honest with myself. It came from me realizing that a relationship doesn't define me. This isn't to say not to desire one, though. Just don't let it define you. But there's nothing wrong with desiring one. Just don't think that that's all who you are. You're no one if you're not with someone. I've seen a lot of that where people they feel very empty, and so just redefining what it means, coming up with a new way of enjoying it as opposed to feeling pressured to think that I have to be in a relationship. I mean, there's just a lot of pressure out here to be with someone. And I do think it can be very powerful when it's the correct person for you. But when it's not, it can really take you down a path of hurt. And you don't want that.
But it's really difficult, isn't it? Because society is structured around couples. And I know that, women, midlife women particularly, they might be very unhappy, but they're more worried about being alone.
Absolutely.
And the stigma of being alone, especially as they're older, because then the fear kicks in that, I'm never going to find anybody else. But actually, that's a load of rubbish. I'm telling you, ladies, that's a load of rubbish, because we can find people at any age if, as we've talked about, if we're open to possibility, can't we?
You definitely can. The thing is that when you heal, your attraction changes. So when people say, "Well, I'm afraid that I won't meet anybody. I'm afraid I'm gonna be alone," as I tell anyone, if you desire a relationship, you still need to be intentional. Don't just choose the first person that you see. Like, there's a level of being emotionally ready that I don't think people understand. You could be an awesome person, but are you emotionally ready to date? Are you emotionally ready to put yourself out there? Because what happens is when you function on, I'm afraid I'll be alone, you can almost move in a place of desperation to choose anyone to not be alone. And so when you're in a good headspace emotionally, you realize that I do want to share my life with someone. I do want to have another relationship, but it's not out of desperation. It's not out of feeling like no one will want me. It's understanding that I'm a great catch and I'm a wonderful person. And even though I desire a relationship, I'm not desperate for one. And when you walk in that level of power, you go out differently meeting people. You don't look for the very first person you see and think that this is going to be my new spouse or my new mate. They may not be. And that is a factual thing, or they may be. But just being open to opportunities I think that's where I'm going with it. And so I when you go on, I just want to be in a relationship, Rachel. I have seen people pick someone that they just really had no business choosing because of that. And so I just recommend, when you heal, your attraction changes. What you may have liked before is nothing what you like now, because you are a different person. When you are healed, you're not the same person you once were. You don't pick the same. You realize what you need in somebody, not necessarily what you want. It's like, no, I need this. I need this type of person in my life. I can't be with this type of person. It doesn't truly complement the highest version of who I am right now.
And it's all about what we think about ourselves as well. I'll just share another little story from my background, that when I came out of my divorce and I was a single parent, I had a child. It was a long time ago now, but I subscribed to the idea that I had baggage, and that this baggage was bad baggage, because I didn't come just as me, I came as a package deal. And it took me quite a while to think,
Wow,
I come as a package deal. And that's absolutely amazing, because I'm an amazing mom. My child is an amazing child. And I completely changed the way I thought about me as that package.
right.
And then my energy, as you say, my energy changed. And, I was no longer the person who was grateful for any kind of attention, but I was actually, a vibrant woman who was definitely there for somebody to, enjoy. I don't know, but do you know what I mean? But yeah, my energy changed because I rethought what it meant to be a single mom.
Absolutely. Yeah, that it all goes into the paradigm that you have, that filter, um, the belief system that's been developed on how you see being single, how you see being a mom, how you see being divorced. You can look at all of that as a limitless opportunity or a limited place to stay. And because honestly, I could tell a person, you're amazing. There's so much more for you. But if you don't learn how to create that new belief system about yourself, then you would never explore what that actually will look like for you. And I think that is the most important thing. Just really, it all goes back into your mindset and what you think of yourself. What do you think of what has happened to you? What narrative are you attaching that to? And is it working for you? When people say, I've always been this way, is it working for you? And if it isn't, you don't have to stay that way. We're making things so concrete. And we're making it as if, well, this is all who I am. No, that's all who you've known. But get to know a newer you. Get to know that person and enjoy her and see what she has to offer. See what she's been settling for, and choose not to settle and move in a direction that exemplifies a person not settling. You'll find that you're creating the life that you want.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, follow, and share it. Also, giving a 5-star review really helps get the word out. You'll find the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you can get my book, Magnificent Midlife, Transform Your Middle Years, Menopause, and Beyond. Make the very best of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.